to also talks to the mobile apps. So where smart apps fit in are up here, kind of in the cloud, and they're really the kind of the smarts of SmartThings. They react to the device events like when your door opens, but they can also do cloud-specific triggers. Could be things like schedules or a weather event, and the smart apps can tell a light to turn on, for example, in this little picture, or it can also interact with third-party apps and web services like IFT, like Ben had showed right before that. So here's just some of the things that smart apps can do. You can kind of look through this. These are all ones that we provide out of the box. But kind of more importantly is, here first, let me just show you. Here's an example of this is my dashboard in my mobile app. And so SmartThings aren't just, kind of these simple things. We depend on them throughout the app kind of for everything. They're really the logic that powers SmartThings. So for example, these doors and locks, lights and switches, we call those solutions usually, but they're really smart apps running inside, and all those things inside of those are smart apps. Up here in what we call Hello Home, that's really a smart app that runs that, and a bunch of smart apps underneath it. And then here's kind of the part that we're going to be talking about today, the apps that you can create yourself.
I have a question, Matt.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer it. I'm going to answer it too.
Great.
So in the future, and with some development partners, we see, and if you just go back one slide, opening up the opportunity for folks to create those dashboard modules, which, as Matt mentioned, are just smart apps written in such a way that they're nested and whatever. They're a little bit more complex, but essentially just smart apps. And so extending that capability is something that we can do. And I know that, I think Patrick mentioned on the community site today about, what sorts of things we could, why would someone devote their time to, creating smart apps other than just, sharing with the community and getting something out of it for themselves. I think in the, we see in the not too distant future, the ability to, have your own dashboard. In fact, like if Quickset or just any person thought they wanted to do a better doors and locks module, they could do that. And we want to be able to, in the future, enable users to just choose, their module that they want. Maybe there's a pets module, which we don't have now, but it's sponsored by someone, and, they could get that in there. And so I could see there being businesses sort of built up around smart app delivery, not only the smart apps that are here, but also what you do with the smart apps later. Maybe there's a smart app that sells a subscription service or something. So there's a lot of possibilities. We're at the infant stage of this, but we've sort of set the groundwork in the way that we've developed the platform to be able to do that.
Great, yeah, thanks. So from the start, we know that there's no way that we're going to be able to handle everyone's unique case. So one of our requirements all along was to allow developers to write their own unique smart apps. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. And just to give a couple stats, SmartThings, I think there's something like 150 to 200 apps that are provided by SmartThings. But there's about 6,000 self-approved apps, and that from developers. So those are ones that SmartThings didn't write. And these are ones that developers have written and they've published for themselves, so they can install it and run them like in their own houses. So that is kind of reassuring that we're on the right track, because there's way more smart apps that people are developing for themselves than we have. So, all right, so enough slides for now, I think. So my plan is going to be to actually start from scratch, create a smart app. I don't know I think there's some kind of varied backgrounds of people who've written. Some people have written smart apps, some haven't. So we'll start from scratch, and then keep adding on to the one smart app, bunch of new features, just to kind of show the power of some of the different kinds of things you can do with smart apps. So all of it, I'm going to do all of it in the Web IDE that we have, and I'll show you all that. That's what we use to create and test smart apps. It's also used to create and test device types, though we're not going to really talk about those at all today. And we dog food this. We use this internally, and we test things and use the IDE pretty extensively. So the last thing. So here's kind of where we're going to go. If you don't have an account, you can go to the /register. And if you do, then you're all set, I guess. And I'll show you what we do. So the last part before I demo here, I have all the code I'm going to be using at this GitHub repo, and there's a short version of it, a bit.ly. So you can go there and follow along if you want. Yeah, so I think that's it for the slides. So let me go. So here's that repository. Can you see this now? My GitHub?
Yeah.
Everyone? Okay, good. So basically, the smart app we're going to write is the kind of pretty simple case of turn on a light when a door opens.
Hey, Matt, just quickly, can you copy and paste the one or both of those links in the chat?
Yes, thank you. I will do that.
Thanks to Patrick for that.
Yeah, maybe if I can get Ben's face out of the way. There's that one. Okay. So yeah, thanks. That's a good idea. So each one. So here's all the steps we'll take. I'll walk through this, but each one has a link that you can click on, and it'll show kind of what the difference is, the things that we're going to change. And there's also some references to documentation in there. So I'm going to open those because I'm going to actually refer to those a couple times. So here's our official docs.smartthings.com. I just have it linked directly to the SmartApp section. And then under reference material in there is a second link that I tried to open. So I'm going to do that. And this has kind of lower level details. This guide is a little higher basic parts of a smart app, how to write a smart app. And this other one that's linked in the reference materials, I'll talk about a little more, but it has some of the actual methods and some specific implementation details. So, all right, so let's get started. Let me get rid of the slides. We're done with those. All right. So the first, if you're not familiar, this is graph.api.smartthings.com. This is where you can, what's that?
You can also get to it at ide.smartthings.com as a shortcut.
Can, that's awesome. Okay. Lovely, says Ben. Anyway, so on this page, if you have a menu item that says My Smart Apps already, you don't have to do anything. But if you've just signed up through the mobile app and you've never been here before, some of those menu items won't be there, but instead there'll be a link down here at the bottom that says Become a Developer. So just click that, and then you'll automatically be a developer and see all this stuff. So, all right, so we're going to create a smart app. So I'm going to start with My Smart Apps. If you have a bunch of smart apps, they'd already be here, but we're going to add a new one. So I'll just explain what the fields are on this page. So the first is the name. So we're going to call it Turn on a Light when the door opens. And this is displayed in your in the mobile app once you publish it. It's displayed in the simulator. So that's just whatever you want to name it. Your namespace, technically optional, but we kind of recommend you using it, and we recommend you use your GitHub username just as a convention. So I'll use mine as Matt Nohr. The author is automatically filled in. You can write in the description, turn on light when my door. And then the category is kind of where it'll be organized within the app. Generally, I choose my apps to start with. And then the last thing, I'm going to leave this include Apache 2.0 license in the source. That'll just automatically include that when it generates the template file. Then I'm not going to kind of change anything else in here, but I'll explain what some of these fields are. There's this app settings, and these are if you're interacting with a external API, you might want to fill this in with like OAuth credentials or username and passwords. Then they're stored with the SmartApp, but if you're sharing the code, they won't be shared along with that. So
Matt,
your own yeah.
Are you zoomed in? And is everyone else seeing him sort of zoomed in, or are they seeing the full screen?
I got full screen.
Oh, it's weird. Mine just like sort of changed to like some sort of zoomed mode. That's fine. Keep going.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Let me know if there's anything I can make it easy.
There's a slider at the bottom. Did you mess with that by mistake?
No, but yeah, I'm fine. If everyone else is seeing the full screen, I'm good.
Okay. So yeah. So these app settings are kind of private things that you don't want as part of the SmartApp code. These are icons, a small one and a big one. When I use icons, I usually use either the same one in both, or I only have one kind of device, so it doesn't. I know my iPhone 5 always uses the larger icons anyway, so it doesn't really matter for me. But for now, we'll just leave those at the default. You can, if you're gonna enable OAuth, so external services can interact with your SmartApp, you can click this button. And down here, there's a resources section that's not really used anymore, so it's hidden, but it's there just for kind of historic purposes. So, all right, I'm going to click create, and then what it's going to do is take us into the actual IDE here. It's built a kind of skeleton SmartApp for us. So in a sec here, I'll just make this actually work. It's pretty close already, actually. Let me talk. Let's see. Well, first, you can see up here, it put the license information that I clicked. Let me just talk real briefly about some IDE things. Just in here, if you have a preference of, I don't know, some kind of look and feel, you can change that. And if anyone uses Vim or Emacs, you can use those key maps too. I've never used those, so if anyone does and they love them, let me know. So for the actual SmartApp then, it's kind of broken down into a few different sections. It's all written in Groovy, and while I'm doing this, if there's any Groovy questions that you have about why something works, I can try to answer it. So the first part is definition section here. This is just exactly what we typed on that previous screen. You can edit it and change it here. You can also go back to app settings up in the corner here, and it'll have the same information. But
and it's important to note that if you make changes here, it'll overwrite the changes you make. It'll overwrite the other ones on the form page. This is the reference, right, Matt?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, this is what it really uses, but the form page is just a little kind of helper for building this up. And then there's a preferences section, and this is for kind of all the inputs into your SmartApp. So it could be kind of which devices you want to control. It could be timeouts like numbers, or it could be a phone number that you want to text. So all that kind of goes in the preferences section. And actually, let's just kind of start and make this part work. So I'm going to say, so within a preferences, there's sections and then inputs. So the preferences can have multiple sections, and each section can have multiple inputs. For now, I'm just going to say when the door opens, and then I'm going to erase this and say create an input. And this is going to be the open close sensor. That's what I want to use as an input. So I'm going to call this contact one. You can call it the first variable here is kind of the variable name. And the next part is what type it is. And usually these are capabilities. So I'm going to say capability dot contact sensor. And then if you want, you can give it a title. So I'm going to call it title where. You don't have to put a title. The default is which, I think. There's some other things you can put. I'll show a few of those a little bit later too.
Okay, so it's important to like note here that like this preferences section is the section that end users will see when they're actually setting up the Smart App, like after they install it and then they're setting things up. That's where this manifests.
Yeah, thanks. Yep, so this text is what the users will see. Thank you, yeah. So when the door opens, and we also need to actually turn on a light. So I'm going to say turn on a light for this section name. I'll call this switch one, and it's a capability.switch. And I'm just going to leave it just like that. That's enough for that one. Okay, so those are kind of what we want as inputs. Now let me talk a little about these next chunk here. These methods are kind of required or are required for every Smart App. They are when you install a Smart App for the first time, this installed method gets called. If a user goes in and just updates its settings, like changes which light, for example, then this updated method would get called. As you can see, both of them here call a method called initialize, because generally these two methods end up doing the same thing. So what we're going to do, I'll talk about that unsubscribe line in a second here, but what we're going to do is subscribe.
Matt,
yeah.
Before you get too far, sorry, I just wanted to correct you. You have a typo in capability.switch. Capability.
Thank you. That wouldn't have worked.
That was Greg.
Thank you. It would have yelled at me eventually. All right. All right. Thanks for that. So in initialize, what we're going to do is basically we're going to listen for whenever the door opens. And when that happens, we're going to turn around and turn on a light. So we're going to subscribe to this contact sensor. So we called it contact one. And then the next part is what we're listening for. So we're going to say contact.open. And then, so we only really, for this app, we only really care about when the contact sensor opens. So that's kind of the syntax there. We could just use contact and then open and close would work. But this is the actual capability we're looking for. So contact.open, and then we have to tell it what to do when that happens. So we're going to have it call a method called contact open handler. We'll just call it. And so now that we're actually subscribing in here, we have to be careful and make sure that when this app is updated, we call unsubscribe. It was automatically filled in to make sure of that. And the reason for that is if the user wants to change like which door, for example, if you don't unsubscribe, you might inadvertently be listening to multiple doors that you don't expect. So it's very important to call or like leave this unsubscribe if you're going to be subscribing to devices. Okay, so now down here it says implement event handlers. So I have this open handler that I said I'm going to call. So we'll call that. And we're just going to create a new groovy method here called open handler. It takes in an event. And then we'll put you can see there's a couple of debug messages in here already. So we'll do another one just so we know that this gets called. Debug, or maybe and these use log4j if you're familiar with that. So the levels, you can do debug, trace. I'm going to do info here. We're just going to say turning on switch. And then I'm going to put the name of it. So switch one. This is all, and this is a kind of groovy way to create a string. And then not easy to type when I'm talking. All right, and then to actually turn on the switch, it's actually pretty easy. All you have to do is say, so switch. This is what we defined up here in the section and the input up here. So that's the name of it, switch1.on. That's all you have to do. So, and that's it. And this is hopefully this is a working SmartApp. So I click the save button. You also can just there's key mapping, so you can do kind of Mac. You can do Command S. So now I'm actually going to try running this. Hopefully it works here. So over on this side of the IDE, there's you choose which location. I have one set up just called Workshop here, but usually you only have one location anyway, so you just say set location, and usually doesn't take this long. Okay, so what it did, so here's kind of what the user would see, and I'll try in a little bit. I'll try once we add a few more things. I'll show how to, or actually publish it and install it through the iOS app. But for now, it's using these virtual device. You can choose either virtual devices or physical devices. Virtual devices are ones that are just live inside the simulator, inside the IDE. So I'll use those just to start with here. So I'm just going to use those, say install. And then you should see something that looks kind of like the mobile apps with these tiles. So here's the contact sensor. Down here's a switch. You can click it to turn it on, I hope. Maybe. Switch on. It's supposed to work. Of course, this is a demo, so it's not going to work the first time. Let me try one more time here. All right.
Every once in a while, I run into that too on the simulator, and usually just a refresh makes it start working, or I go out to Smart Apps and then relaunch the app.
Yeah, let me try. Yeah, let me try that. All right, so yeah, so what he's saying is sometimes he goes all the way back here, clicks back into here, and then tries again. And I have seen this before. Usually it works pretty well, but and of course all day it was working fine. Wouldn't be a demo if it was that easy. Switch on. So this is supposed to turn pretty green. Well, how about we try this? Instead of have some physical devices, let's try using those through the simulator here. I don't know, can you see my little lamp here? Let's see if we can turn this on through the simulator. See if I send open here. Open. Well, let's see. Sorry about this. Of course, it couldn't go that smoothly. All right, I am going to refresh this all together.
I think it's because you're using a Mac. That's got to be it.
Oh. So I'm getting events coming, it's just not updating the simulator. Well, this will make for an interesting demo. Now let me try.
I'm going to try to.
Let's try closing this. Starting all over here. Sorry, everyone. So one thing I can point out while I'm having problems, now that I go back to this My Smart Apps page, here's your list. Here's my Smart App. You can see I have it because I kind of left in the middle of that. It's still running in this location because I didn't uninstall it. So I'm just going to click that little X there, and that uninstalls the Smart App. Let's try one more time. If this doesn't work, we'll see if we can publish it and run it through the simulator, through the iOS simulator, that is. All right, well, let's try this.
I'm seeing the same thing too, so yeah, I don't know.
It's definitely turning on the console.
Right. Yeah, I'm seeing events coming through, but the simulator is not refreshing for some reason. So here's what I'm going to do. I wonder, actually, here, let me try one more shot at it. Just in case it's because I was running in that weird incognito mode. But if other people are seeing it too, then... So if this doesn't work, I'm just going to publish it, and then I'll show you what it looks like through the iOS app, which is another valid way you can test too. So what he was saying here is down here, it's saying it received an on command. So these are actual events that are being flowed through our system. Actually, if I click the, yeah. All right. So to publish apps, I'll just jump to that. Up here, there's a publish button, and you can just say publish for me. So I am going to do that. All right, so that you can see this working, I'm actually going to run it through the iOS simulator here so you can see it on my screen. All right, so to install it here, I clicked the big plus sign here. And over here now there's My Apps, and here's the one that we just created. So like Ben was saying, here's what the user will see when this door opens. I only have one hooked up to this right here. And turn on a light, this one. Done. All right. So hope this works. Let's see if this works. Maybe. I just open this. Of course. Oh, there we go. All right. So I just open this, turned on the light like it was supposed to. Lovely. All right. So making a little bit of progress. So that was the basic. Turned on a light, it opened. Even this isn't refreshing very fast. So there we go. So yeah. So if I turn this off, there we go. Open this. Turn on. All right. Lovely. All right. So the next thing we want to do, instead of having one switch, we're going to do multiple switches. So that's a pretty quick change. Instead of calling it switch one, I'm just going to call it switches. So one of the optional parameters you can put here is you can say multiple true. That's going to be hard because I only have one hooked up. But and then the only other thing I have to change is really to say switches.on. And I guess I should update my log message so that works. I can save it. I'll show you what it looks like here. I only have one actual switch on this location, so. But now you can choose multiple. You can even choose virtual and physical devices. And here you can choose physical. We'll see, maybe it's just, maybe it'll start working. So now you can see, here's my actual lamp. It should turn off that I did that, yep. And this is a virtual switch. And this is my actual front door that's closed, this thing that's pretending to be my front door. Let's see, maybe if I open it, it will work. Maybe, maybe not. But kind of get the idea. I won't show this through the mobile app because I only have one switch. But so I think, thinking the simulator is just slow for some reason.
I think it is. I think that it actually eventually will refresh.
Yeah, see there, it just turned on. So it's, and here's our log message. So,
and just a note for people who maybe haven't used this before, this is not the normal behavior of it. It's usually pretty snappy. So we're obviously going to look into that.
Yeah, sorry about this. So yeah, really slow. Okay. One nice thing that we have is up in the corner here, there's Browse Smart Apps. So you can, there's a whole bunch of apps because obviously we don't expect you to kind of memorize all of this syntax. So we have a bunch of examples of our apps and ones that people have shared or we've shared. And let me just click one. So they range from this, what did I click on? Some Sonos one that's pretty complicated, to this one, which is pretty simple, for example. And there's even one that's turn it on when it opens. So surprise, this looks pretty similar to what I have so far. You can even see the difference between what you have and the example, or let me see, yeah. So here's the example code. You can see I have some ellipses here instead of some punctuation differences, but it switches that on down here. So if I wanted to, I could kind of overwrite everything and use this example, but this is pretty powerful. So you can kind of get an idea. You can browse examples, see. You have an idea that's close to one of our existing apps. You might want to start with that and just kind of you can click this overwrite button and overwrite your existing code and then just modify it from there. Okay, so now that we have it turning on, the next part that gets used a lot is using schedules. So for this example, we're going to turn it off after 5 minutes, a configurable number of minutes. Before I do that, are there any questions? Is this going?
There have been a few questions, yeah, sure. And I can try to relay some. I think some are like questions like, hey, can we do this in the future? But one of the first ones was when you were doing log debug stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, the differences between debug, trace, and info,
sure.
That came up.
Yep. Just practically, they will all show up if I install this again. You can see here there's a debug and a trace. So the labels are a little different. And typically, trace messages are kind of the lowest level. Then they go up to debug and then usually info. You can also do warn if you want. So it's just kind of your own, how it feels comfortable to you, what levels you want to use. But usually trace is the real low level. in a method. Debug stuff is that you might not care about so much, and then the info is more kind of, well, like it says, informational things that you actually are interested in. They will all show up in this console down here. I haven't really talked about that too much, but hey, there it worked. So you can see it has this info. It's blue, so it kind of calls it out a little better. But it's kind of your own personal preference.
Patrick, you're asking about, you kind of more feature requests or whatever else, but have you seen the console filters that are on like the separate log page view?
Oh yeah, we can change that.
There's not filters, currently on the little console that's underneath the SmartApp code. Maybe it's something that we should do, but we are working on some filters and definitely improving those filters on the log console as well. But yeah, you're right. That's device filters at the moment, and you'd like to see other ones like just show trace and debug or info. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be nice. And then you might not, because and at least when I'm doing, not SmartApp development, but development outside, a lot of times you can, once something's working, you can kind of tune it down so you don't see trace messages or you don't see debug messages at all. And the separate log viewer that Ben was talking about, I clicked, I can do it from either page. Here's what it looks like. There's this logs link in your menu bar. So you can see my multi-sensor here just sent in a report that it's inactive, it's closed. If I open it, it's active. So. But then it also has, here's our SmartApp that we have. It replied with turning on a lamp, or turning on my switch, and the lamp replied. So this is just another way you can see some of these log messages and see kind of everything that's happening. All right, so looks like the simulator's back to its normal self here. So that is good. So I can talk a little bit about, so these are two virtual devices. If I change the preferences, I can use, like, you may have seen me do here I'll do a mix of virtual devices. So I'm using a virtual contact sensor, then one virtual switch and this actual lamp. So I'm going to turn it off here. And now when this virtual contact sensor opens, I'm just going to press play here. Both the actual lamp turns on and the virtual lamp turned on. So it's actually really powerful and really good for testing, because sometimes you don't have all the devices, or you don't actually want to test with your real lights or your real switches or your real contact sensors. So, or you don't want to be going and opening and closing your door every time you want to test this. So, yeah. Does anyone have any more questions about that? All right. So now we'll set it so the user can optionally turn it off on a schedule. So what we're going to do, let's see here. Is that what we want to do? Yeah. So there's lots of scheduling methods. I'll show one concrete one here. We're going to add another section. I'm going to say turn it off after this many minutes. The input, so this isn't going to be I'm going to call it off minutes, but it's not a device. It's actually going to be a number. And here's another optional field you can add. I'm going to say this is not required, so I'm going to say required. False. If you make it required, then, or if you don't include this, like these two above, then it is required. So that's the default. So if you don't want something required, then you can use required false here. Then we're going to, after we turn it on, we're going to check and see if that's set. So we're going to say if off minutes. And the method we're going to use here is called run in. It's one word, run with a capital I, run in. Then you tell it the number of seconds you want to use. So I had said minutes, and I'll tell you why here in a second. Off minutes times 60 to get seconds. And then kind of like we did with the subscribe, you have to give it the name of a method you want it to call. I'm going to call it scheduled turn off. So technically you can put any number of seconds you want in here, but we don't. 1 minute is kind of the minimum that we kind of support. Anything less than that, it probably will work, but it might not. And even 1 minute, it might be 60 seconds, it might be 70 seconds. It's not going to be exactly a minute. So be warned if you're trying to do something really exact here. So again here, I called this method schedule turnoff, so I actually have to create that method. So I'm going to call it schedule turnoff. Again, I'll put a message in here just so we know that it's running. Switches minutes, and then so again, this is just a Groovy string here that is just going to substitute when you use the $sign. If people aren't familiar with Groovy, use the $sign and then a variable name, and it'll replace that in a string. And then, like we did switches.on up above, we can do switches.off. Easy as that. Now, the one thing that I need to add that I haven't yet, since we're doing a run-in, that's a type of schedule, you need, like you called unsubscribe, you need to do unschedule. That way, you just make sure that there aren't any extra schedules out there, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that. So let's try this. While it's running here, we're gonna have to wait a minute. So we'll use this actual lamp here to, and because it was optional, this field is not expanded by default. So I'm just gonna say 1 minute. We're gonna install it. And then let's turn that off. Maybe, nope. All right, so we're gonna open it. It should turn on, and then in a minute from now, it should turn off. So while it's doing that, let me bring up the documentation real fast here. So actually, I want this. There's also a documentation link in the app here, and that takes you to the same place. So now I actually want the reference that's under reference material, smart apps. That's what I'm going to talk about here, because I'm definitely not going to go into detail on all of these, but here's the method that we just called. So it's run in seconds method. There's some other ones that other scheduling methods that I'm not going to talk about, but they're listed out here. You can do run once, and then you give it a date. So if you say, I want this to turn off, hey, it just turned off, so that must have been about a minute. If you want it to run at a certain time, or you can use cron expressions and schedule it, to run every day at a certain time, for example. There's also run hourly and run daily if you want. So there's a whole bunch of scheduling methods, and I'm not going to talk more about that right now unless someone else has any questions about that. So you can see here, turned on in the console here, 7:50:53, and exactly 1 minute later, which is lucky for me, it turned off. So that's kind of exactly what we expected to. Is that all right? Moving along. Is that if Ben, feel free to interrupt me at any point here if something comes up. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep talking, and if there's specific things you want to know how to do too with smart apps, let us know, and I can try to answer those too. One thing before I get any further, so I published this earlier. Now if I go back to my smart apps list, there's a little status here that shows that it's been edited. So we can see, and you can click, I clicked the little magnifying glass, so you can see kind of what's changed. Just if you're interested, this is another code mirror view of what the published version has over here, and then what we are using, or what we call it the draft version because you haven't clicked publish yet. Once I publish it, then this goes to published, I think. I don't remember what the status is. Okay, so the next big thing that gets used a lot is app state. Excuse me one sec. So every time that this smart app gets invoked, it's a new instance of it, so there's no idea of, you can't kind of use class level variables or anything like that, or instance variables. However, oftentimes it's necessary or very helpful if you have some kind of state from the last time it ran. So what I'm going to do, well, first I'm going to plug our documentation here again. Where's, the SmartApp Developers Guide. There's a whole section here on state. So there's more information than I'm going to cover. I'm just going to store one little thing, but you can store numbers, you can store maps, you can store strings, and then kind of read and write from that every time. It's like a one-stop storage place for for the state of your application. So how I'm going to use it in this app is I'm not going to, when the schedule runs after a minute or however long, if the door is still open, I'm not going to turn off the light. It's kind of a stretch for using state, and I'm actually going to probably come back to this, or I will come back to this because there's a much simpler way to do that, but I really want to show you kind of how to use state because it's used a lot. So I'm not going to change any of the preferences or the installed or updated, but what I do want to store is if the door is open or closed. That's the value that I'm going to store in state. So instead of this contact open handler, I need to listen to both open and closed events. I'm going to get rid of the contact.open. I'm just going to change this to contact handler instead of open handler. You could just leave it just as easily too, but so now all open and closed events are coming in, so I have to check to see if this isn't open before I turn it on. Well, actually, here, let me show you how state works first. So all I have to do is say state dot, and then you give it whatever kind of variable name you want. So I'm going to say contact state, maybe. And then I'm going to say event dot value. So that will be either open or closed. So that's all I'm going to use. And then since all events are coming in here, again, I'm going to say if event.value equals open, then turn it on and then schedule it if I need to. So I'll just indent that just because I'm particular about that. Then down here, when it turns off, I only want to turn it off if the I can do it here. If state.contact state is closed. So that's so save that, run that. So basically, I'm just storing whether or not it's open or closed in the state. That's one thing. You might want to store other things like when's the last time it ran, just so it doesn't run very often. So Yeah, I want to turn off. I like using this lamp so you can actually see. And all right, so I'm going to open this contact sensor, this virtual one, and I'm just going to leave it open. So now this is kind of a bad example because a minute's going to pass and nothing's going to happen and we won't really know. So I'm going to actually put in a little debug message down here, or log.debug, sure. Say not turning off because it is still open. So I made a change and I clicked save. This is good to show. So you can see over here, it automatically is going to try to update. It kept all the same settings, so I can just click update. And now down here it says, you can see it says it's saying updating instead of installed. So it also says deleting all scheduled. I just turned that light off just if you're playing around along at home. So it deleted all the schedules and then it created it because that was the unscheduled thing. So now, yeah, let's see. That's what I meant to do originally. Now if we open it, the light turns on, a minute should pass, and we should get that log message, but the light shouldn't turn off. So yeah, does that sound good? So that's one example of how you can use state. There's a kind of note here in the documentation about using dates. How we store the state, I don't want to get into too much detail, but basically you're going to have to kind of convert it back to a date if you're trying to use dates. But you could use, oops, let me do that. You could use, like I said, this is a groovy map. You could do lists. You can use kind of more complicated structures than just the simple kind of name value pair that I used. Let's see. So it should be any minute now, hopefully. So then next, assuming this all works, I'm going to show a much easier way to accomplish the same thing here. So, like I said, sometimes it doesn't take exactly a minute. It takes a little bit longer for this work.
Because it's polling, and you might have hit it right at like the beginning of its polling phase or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Do this right? Well, we'll assume that we'll just move on. This we don't have to wait around for it, but get the idea for that's kind of the basics of using state. I'm gonna jump back to what I had before this, which is not that, which is this. If you're following along with the code in the GitHub repository, it's jumping back to step 4. But just because instead of I'll show you there's an easier way to do that, exactly the same thing. So instead of using state and changing the handler name and listening to all the events, we can just query devices or ask a device for what its current state is. So for this contact one, we can say, what's your latest value? So that's what I'm going to try to do here. So instead of that, if the state is closed, I'm going to say is tag one. So the syntax of this is I don't want to do latest state, I want latest value. The syntax of this is you give it the kind of capability or the attribute that you're looking for. These open-close sensors have open-close, the active, inactive, the 3-axis, the temperature. So I can get the latest value of any of those right here. For this, all I really am worried about is the open close part of it. So if this equals closed, then I'm going to do this. And then, like I did last time, let's put a little message in here. Not turning off the lamp because the door is open. Hopefully this time it'll respond for me. Save. Let's try to run this. 1 minute again. Oops. Meant to do. Oh, this is just going to use this virtual light. That's all right. So that turned on. Hopefully, in a minute, it will turn off. So, and in a little bit, I'll talk a little bit more about how you can query other events too and get the whole kind of event that came in for when it opened. But this is using this latest value. It's kind of a good way to just see what state an actual device is in. Are there any questions, or am I rambling on too much?
There's been a lot of side conversations about things like queues and tools, but maybe some of these will surface now if people want to ask Matt.
Sure. Yeah, I don't have the chat up at all, so
that's fine. Bob and Bob and Tyler are doing a good job.
Great, thank you. So here, if you saw, it came through after a minute here about not turning this off because the door is still open. So that worked just like I expected it to. All right, does anyone have any dump the chump questions? All right. So let's see.
Hey, question.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, it was actually answered in the chat earlier, but
okay.
Is there a way to make the unsubscribe, the unscheduled just automatically default go in there, just like the unsubscribe automatically goes in there?
Well, what did they say? No, yeah, it should be possible. Generally, I don't know what everyone else thinks, but generally most apps subscribe to devices and not all of them schedule. So I think that's probably why it is like it is today. We could probably add that in there. I don't know what Bob or anyone else thinks, but
I mean, I think that there's definitely going to be room. Sorry, Bob, you should answer it in 1 second, but I'm just going to say that there's going to be a lot of room for UI improvements for the IDE, in the coming months. I think we've been saying that for a while, but I think we're going to be actually doing that soon. And so these are good questions and good feedback that we're seeing. You know, potentially there's some dynamic things that, like, when you put a subscribe method in, something else, pops up with help or whatever. But Bob, what do you think?
So as far as the question about subscribe, Matt hasn't covered it, but there are a couple of fairly rare cases where you subscribe to events that aren't from a particular device. The reason you need to do the unsubscribe and resubscribe with every update of the app is that presumably someone might be changing which devices are configured and which, and so you'd want to unsubscribe from the old ones and subscribe to the new ones. There are a couple places where you can do things like subscribe to an event from a location or subscribe to an app touch, which might not change with every update. And therefore the thought, and this is mostly the historical thought, was that, we don't want to always unsubscribe because you might lose that subscription. However, the pattern that people most often do is just to subscribe to everything every time there's an update. And therefore, I think that suggestion to unsubscribe automatically to everything is probably a good one. We do that if you uninstall the app, of course, we unsubscribe to everything automatically. And so I think it's probably, if I had to do over again, I'd probably do it that way. And, with backward compatibility issues aside, it's something I think we could consider moving forward to make it kind of less error prone, because it is possible to have a dangling subscription to a device that is no longer selected, which isn't a good thing.
Right.
You know how embarrassing that can be.
Yeah, you're dangling subscriptions, right? The other thing to mention that I don't believe it was covered here is that you're not limited to blanket unsubscribes either, and so there might be cases where you want to unsubscribe. This can sometimes happen in another event handler or in a scheduled thing. You can actually unsubscribe to a particular handler by passing that in as an argument. So if you had basically a contact open handler and a contact open closed handler, and for some reason you wanted to unsubscribe from one and not the other, you would just pass in contact open handler to the unsubscribe, and it would only do that one.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good point. Okay.
The other thing, Matt, go back and click on the smart apps, the list of smart apps, because I think you've been changing this one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, so if this was another question too. If you click on that little magnifying glass by edited. So I think that was an earlier question. So this will tell you the difference between your published version and your draft version if you've edited it.
Oh, okay. Nice. Yep. Good, thanks. Okay. Then keep going.
Yeah.
All right. So next thing I want to do is send some notifications. So we support prefer sending push notifications, but we also support sending text messages. Also in Hello Home, I still have my, up here in Hello Home, you can get notifications. So let me show you how we can do that. So, okay. I'm going to start by asking the user if they want notifications. That's pretty good practice. We're going to add another section. Again, a section can have multiple inputs. That's what we're going to do here. I just use it kind of as logical groupings. So first, we're going to see if they want a push notification. So I'm going to call this variable push notification. And this kind of pattern is sprinkled throughout our example SmartApp. So it might look a little familiar. This is a Boolean, so it's kind of a yes or no. Do we want a push notification? I'm going to call it push notification. And then I'm not going to make this required. And then I'm also going to ask about text messages. So the variable name is going to be called phone, because it's going to be a phone number. The type is going to be called phone. So that's kind of confusing, but so the first one is the variable name, which I'm going to call phone, and the input type is actually a phone number. So on the mobile apps, you'll get the kind of keypad to enter your phone number. So here's another one that we haven't done yet, description. So this is kind of a placeholder. Usually I use it for helper text. Tap to enter phone number. So this is just kind of the default value, kind of grayed out in the text box until the user enters an actual value. So, and again, I'm going to make this false, not required. All right. So okay. So basically, what I'm going to send out, the notification, is when the door opens. So down here in the open handler, after I turn on the lights and schedule the turning off, I'm going to first check to see if either one of those are entered, if the user selected or put values in either one of those. So is if push notification or phone, then I'm going to say the message is, I'm going to create a variable called message. That equals your one is open. For devices, I should point out here, if you put a device in here, it uses the label that you've given that device. So in my case, it'll be like your front door is open. And then I'm just going to log that out. Sending notification. Okay, so for push notifications, the method that you can call is called if. Well, so if the user set a push notification first, then the method that you call is just send push, and you pass in the message. For text messages, phone, it's similar, but you have to pass in a phone number too. So you say send SMS, phone number, and the message. That's basically it. So let's try this. I'm not quite sure. Let's see. I guess I should probably go to my phone. A push notification. So we'll say turn on the push notification. Let's see if this does anything. Open that. Let's see if I get a push notification. Maybe. Probably not going to. But you can see how it says sending notification. Your contact is open. So should have sent that as a push notification. Let me try. The other thing you can do, I mentioned, at least so I can have something to show you. You can send messages so they show up. This is your kind of hello home feed. And so here that message showed up. If you want messages to kind of only show up in here, you can use a method called just send a notification. So that would look like that, and then that would just show up in your hello home feed. And you can combine these. I don't want to go too deep in here, but you can, instead of doing the push notification, you can say method push, something like that, and then it will show up in your hello home feed, and you get the push notification. And if you want to do a phone number, both is the method, and then phone is phone, something like that. So that's just one way you can, another way you can send messages that if you want to use that hello home notifications more too. All right, does that make sense? Any questions? Keep going. All right.
There have been a few on the side thread, but I think that they're getting answered. If they're not getting answered, either speak up with your voice or text it right now, and we can see if Matt can chime in as well. But no, I mean, I think people are doing a good job trying to answer and things on the side.
Hey, I've got one that I asked the push notifications, does your service actually give a delivery confirmation so we know that it's been pushed out? And could that be possibly wired up to know that it's been delivered?
We do. Our service knows that it at least got to our provider to send it out. And after that, we're not, I don't know if we show that. But we don't have any kind of callback in here right now. like a return from this send push. I don't think we, let me make sure here. Yeah. So I like that idea. The problem is, like I said, almost always, I don't know if there's ever been a case where it failed to get out of our system and into our kind of service provider. Whether or not it got down to your phone or not, that's kind of another question that it's kind of out of our control right now. And well, not out of our control, but we don't really have a good way of knowing whether or not it failed from them. So at least not, especially not in real time.
Matt, are you going to get into default value at all?
For inputs?
Yes.
No. But this would be a good time to talk about that. Are you thinking for like a Boolean value?
Well, there was a question about setting a default message for the push notification.
Yeah. So if you want the default to be on, for example.
Yeah, or just like a default message to send as the notification, but.
And then let the user change that, for example.
Yeah. But I think you can prove it all with just one, even with the.
Yeah, so we do, for inputs, there are default values. Like for that case, we could do something like push, or whatever, push message. Is it text? Sorry. What message? So then the syntax of that is, is it just default, Steve? No, default value, right?
Yes,
default value.
It's default value.
Yeah.
Just like you have there.
Yep. Yeah, because default is a reserved wording groupie, so you can't do that. All right, so here you could say your door is open or something. And then that would let the user overwrite that. If they don't change anything, then this your door is open will be what's used. So I can show you here. How did that show up? What did I miss here?
I think that's one of the things that doesn't work in the IDE.
Oh.
It will work in the mobile app, but there's a number of things where we're still a bit behind in the simulator from what you can actually do, with your own apps in the mobile device.
Oops. All right, so I'll show it real quick here. As we're talking about it, it's a good question. I'll just publish this and then show the mobile app. What did I do? So here you can see the message had what I typed in there, and the user could change it. Whatever. All right, does that kind of answer the question? You can do that, and then kind of with any of these, well, not the capability, but you could have a default value for the off minutes, 1 or 5 or something. For Booleans, you could do default is false. So.
All right. Look, that looks good. Dustin seems satisfied with that. Matt,
all right, good. All right. Anything else? I have a few more things we can talk about.
Yeah, and if people have some sort of request to, we could try to look at look at that too. If there's a specific thing that we'd want to try to write or whatever. But I want to let Matt get through what he wants to get through, and then we'll do that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if people have other things that are more interesting than stuff I'm talking about, definitely. These are just some of the, I just picked out some of the kind of more common cases, things that get used a lot. So the next, if there aren't any of those requests, I'll move on to querying kind of past events and counting events. Already I'm kind of stretching the limits of, or the constraints of this app, what it was intended to do, but make it a little more complicated too. That I'm only going to send a notification if the door hasn't opened in the last, say, 5 minutes. So again, this might not be the best use of querying events, but just kind of try to squeeze it into the context of this app as long as we're in the middle of it. We could do it using state again, for example, but we'll just try this. So basically, we're going to say if we're going to add a notification delay. So this might not be the best name, but, and this is going to be a number, so I have to, here, let me write it down, and then it makes more sense. And at most 1, something like this. Yeah. So this basically, I don't want to, every time that I'm coming in and out, like just brought home some groceries or something, I don't want to get a notification every time. So this is going to kind of stop that based on how many events or how many times the door has opened in the last like 5 minutes or something in this case. So to do that, I'm going to kind of in here say, just going to create a variable here that I'm going to check. If the user array, so if the user set something in that value or that input I just set, then I'm going to try to query all the events for this contact sensor and see if there are any open messages in the last however many minutes. So I'm going to create something that's kind of my convention. So new date, and I'm going to talk about all this in a sec. Oops, okay, so first of all, I'm going to create a date object. I'm going to start with the current time, and we provide a method called now, that we call it. And that gets you the current time, the current milliseconds. That's how Groovy and a lot of languages measure time. Then we're going to subtract how many minutes and then convert it to milliseconds. So basically, I'm going to look for anything in the last 5 minutes. So the method to call to get the events is events since a given time, so time. And I could combine this all into kind of one line if I wanted to, but this breaks it up a little bit. So here's our device. We want to get all the events since a given time that we computed up here above. And so then to tell whether or not we had any opens, what I'm going to do is use some Groovy here to count how many there are. So I'm just going to, this is this variable from up here. I set it to default to false in case the user didn't set any delay, then it would just ignore it later on. recent events.count. So this is a Groovy method on this event sense will return on a Groovy list. And on a list, you can say count. And you can pass in a closure here. So it's that value. So where the event has a value and the value is open. So that's going to count it. And then if that's more than 1, then there's been, this door is open in the past 5 minutes. The 1 is because coming into this contact open handler, that's an event, an open event. So that's the 1 that we're going to kind of ignore for now. So if there had been more than that, than this current one, then we're going to actually send a notification. So then we just have to use this variable here and say, along with whether or not the user is done a push notification or phone, then we check if there hasn't been. So I said if not a recent, so not recent notification. So that's it. So let me just try this here. We'll see it saying, the first time it'll say sending notification, and then if I do it right away again, it just won't say anything. At least that's my goal here. What did I do? Why isn't it up here? Oh, because I didn't put save. There we go. All right. So maybe. All right. So we're going to say, yes, I want to push notification and send most every 5 minutes. So this first one, we should see it saying sending notification, I hope. Yep. And then if I close it and then click open again. Oh. So that didn't work. That was a big fail. I probably have some wrong logic in here. Let's see. What did I do? Well, no, it was starting to go too smoothly, I figured, so. Open, that's good. Well, I'm just going to move on. We'll pretend it worked. But the event sense is the important part of it anyway. So, yeah, that's a way to kind of query all the events since a given time. Sorry about that. I'll have to go back and look, but I'm not going to bother doing that.
So is there a way to show where the event history is stored?
For a specific device?
Yeah, you're referencing the recent notifications, recent event count. Obviously, that's querying somewhere in the system. I believe it's someplace. But
yeah,
for debugging, can you just show where you would go to look at that?
To look at what events your device has had? Yeah. So if you go under like my devices up here, here's my devices. So here's this contacts multi-sensor. You can look at the current states, but then right here there's a list for list events. If I click that, so let's see. I guess lately it's been sending temperature events. A little earlier, like 20 minutes ago, I must have been playing with it. If I Here, I'll open it here, and then if I refresh this page, should have there's an open event and an active event. So this is where I would go to kind of get an idea of where your past events are. Is that what you were wondering?
Yeah, it was just handy to be able to know where that is.
Yeah, no problem. So that's under My Devices. You can get there through these. You can go into My Locations too. You can say List Devices and then do it, or into My Hubs has a list of your devices. But all of them take you to the same end place. There's a couple different ways to get to this device screen, and then they all have this list of events. All right. That was a good question. Thanks. Anything else? No? All right.
Documentation within the SmartApp.
Like any conventions for documentation, or
just how to do it and why you might do it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, this is already getting hard to read. So we support kind of any of the groovy comments. So you can do, you can say, check latest events. You can do comments like that on a method. You can do kind of the block level comments. That's like at the top here. That's what we do automatically. So that's kind of how you do it. You can do it at the end of a line too. You could say, you do fix this. So that's kind of how you do it. But I agree, it's pretty important, especially if you're going to be sharing your SmartApp, posting on the community site or something. As they get bigger and bigger and more complicated, it gets pretty hard to understand kind of what's going on. So putting comments in like that are pretty valuable to explain kind of what you're trying to do. And hopefully people will be able to kind of read through the comments and the kind of the inline documentation and kind of understand what's happening. I'm a big proponent of that. I'm not doing that here as much as I should, but
it's how I learned to do most of my coding in SmartApps here, is by looking at other people's apps and reading documentation. So. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. So I usually when I'm writing them for myself, I do that. Except just for today, I'm trying to breeze through this, so I kind of left that off. But I definitely agree that's very valuable. Everyone go do that.
And, I can tell you by looking at the submissions of SmartApps, there is some really well documented SmartApps, and then there's some that are not at all. And it's much easier to see what's going on with the documented ones.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Have you looked at wireless three-way as the shared apps? That's one of my hyper documentation attempts.
I think I have seen that.
Let's go find it. Let's see. Let's see. There's no way we'll be able to find this. There we go. Perfect. Look at all that. So yes, this is the example of what you need to do. Don't do this. Don't do as I say. Don't do as I do. Yeah, thanks. This is great. All right. Any other questions? I only have a couple more that I don't really need to get to, but if I can keep talking.
I got a real quick question for you.
Yeah.
How would you go about debugging a variable state in real time?
Variable state,
like, for example, your contact, what is the current state, or the recent notifications. You've got a recent notification equals, but what if you actually wanted to debug that value?
Probably the best way we have to do it right now would be, putting in log messages, debug messages. We don't have any way to kind of attach a debugger like through an IDE or anything. I don't know if that's what you were getting at, but
well, I just had a thought, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hijack here, but states
go ahead.
viewed in the location's SmartApp status, right? So could you actually log the value of that variable to a device state, and then actually look at the value within the location's SmartApp parameters? Way off topic here. So if you go to My Locations and you pull up your SmartApp, your state values, right? You'll see the switches state.
Right.
Scroll all the way down to your.
Yeah. So like here.
So you can see your push notification. Like, could you actually subscribe? Or could you actually use that as a variable debugger effectively?
So you could store in state. You're thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So at some point here, I could say, like this is what you're thinking, right? Let me make sure I'm on the same page. Close that. Something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So then after this runs, you could go there and see what the value of recent notification was at this point. Yes. Yeah. That's a good way. That would be another way you could do it. Yeah. I like it.
Just thought of it.
Yep. That would tell you the value of it at, when you set it the last time it ran. Yeah. It wouldn't quite be real time.
You can make an array and store them,
Sure.
historically.
Yeah, you could have a list of them, right? Yeah. The last 10 or something. You could do that. I'm trying to think. Yeah, that would be a way to do it. It's not technically real time, as it's, the debug is happening. We don't have a way to see what it is, but you could do that.
Yeah, to me, that actually is a big problem I've had, where the IDE doesn't actually, it'll stop logging, especially if you go on debugs. But I want to know that state of that one variable.
Okay.
Especially when I switch over to the app and may not have the logs open. Is there a way to actually see the log debugs persist outside of having the logs window open?
I'll address that. There is not currently. That's something that it's not imminent on the roadmap, but it's something we've wanted to do for a long time. So the log console is useful in that it will give you immediate results, but it's a common problem to go back and something didn't work, and if you didn't happen to have it open, or if you had it open, if the session times out, it'll stop logging. So that's a problem we've recognized ourselves doing our own app development. So I don't have a date for you, but we are looking at essentially doing what you were describing, kind of ad hoc, but doing it in a more general way that would keep the log data separate from the other state data that the app actually needs, which is probably a good thing to do. And so we just want to do something and make sure we don't introduce a performance problem to the system, but we're looking at some sort of, at least for some period of time, some ability to persist logs.
Yeah, the hardest part for me is knowing what the variable is, at the moment of either user interaction or automation. And the only thing you can do is trigger a log action for that variable. And some variables, depending on how they're state, they won't actually log out. You've got to parse through the variable type.
You're talking about like a data structure or something like that? Exactly. Yeah, I mean, the log will typically do a toString on the data. So if you wanted to do something other than that, yeah, you need to do that yourself.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, people? I think we have about 20 minutes left, Ben? 15,
Yeah,
20 minutes?
just under 20 minutes. So, if there are things people want to cover, I know Brooks has like 6 smart apps that he wants you to write right now. So I think that, we could try to get to like one of his examples if he identifies like his top example that's not going to take like an hour to write. And otherwise, I think just keep going and we'll see.
Yeah, do you have one you want me to quick try?
Yeah, Brooks, which one are you most interested in? We've got, the humidity one, the first one. Okay, let me see if that's something that how easy it would be to do. So the app is, basically monitoring humidity, and then when humidity is, let's say 10% different from in the bathroom as from the rest of the house, like then do something like turn on a Z-Wave switch. Is that something that you want to take on right now, Matt?
Let's try it. All right, love it. Put me on the spot. We'll do it. All right, so we'll start a new smart app here. Humidity checker. All right. Roll. Let's do it. All right. So, all right. So when the so we're going to need 2 humidity sensors and a switch is kind of what I'm hearing, right?
Yep. And, comparing the two.
So you can compare the two.
Yep.
The other way you could probably compare it would be to have some base value, and if your one humidity sensor gets too high or above some threshold, you could do it that way too, I suppose. So the capability for that is, Bob, you can help me, humidity?
I think it's actually not just humidity. Hold on.
I think it's humidity sensor.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan is here. Check him out. Ooh, and then Patrick said relative humidity measurement.
What? That's a.
I thought it was. I didn't know that was relative. I mean, that's like a new thing, but like I thought it was humidity measurement. But use the docs.
I'm just copying and pasting.
Bob, don't we have a list of all the capabilities in here somewhere?
Yeah, we just posted it in the notes. You haven't seen it.
Just posted.
Yeah, so it's graph.api.smartthings.com/ide/doc/capabilities.
Which I got through from our documentation here, so everyone's aware. Reference material, capabilities. All right.
And that actually is generated whenever there are changes, essentially. So that's always up to date.
You're right. Relative humidity measurement. All right. Got it. Done. Oops. All right. Higher than this room. So we'll just pretend that this is a. I think this relative humidity, that reports in percentages, I think, right? So that'll be a number.
Yeah, it does.
All right. Call it difference. And then we use this. Okay. Oops. So then we want to turn on a call it, but really it's just going to be a switch. All right, so does this look like
Tyler caught a typo on percentage.
I spell it wrong? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the first one.
Thank you. Is that right? Now everything looks wrong. I'm staring at it too closely.
Spelling errors are like probably the number one like programming pitfall.
No. Okay. So we need to subscribe to, oh wait, this shouldn't be a monitor room. This should be base room, we'll call it. So really it's just when the humidity in this one room changes. So we're just going to subscribe to that. And then, so I'm going to subscribe to monitored room. And then I think the attribute is humidity. Oops. That's this. So humidity, and then we'll say humidity handler. Okay. So our method, what it's going to need to do is whenever the humidity in that one room, like I don't know if it's your bathroom, for example, if that humidity in there changes, you want to see, compare it to kind of your base room, your base level. So, def. So I'll just kind of step through it here. So the value that we're going to check is event.value. The value is base room.latest value. That, I think. And then we want to see, do we only care if it's like 10% higher? We'll just say that.
Yeah, 10%.
So if value minus base value is greater than this percentage difference. I don't know if I need parentheses here, but I'll put some around here just to be safe. There, done. All right. I think that's it. So basically what we're doing, we're going to subtract, whatever humidity value there is in your bathroom, and then subtract the value for your, living room or wherever your base is. And then if that's higher than whatever value you set, so the default of 10%, then turn on a switch. Am I meeting my user requirements here?
It's been suggested that you are nominated to write all of the community suggested smart apps.
I'm not quite sure what's going to happen here in the simulator.
In 10 minutes or less, though.
Yes.
Speed. All right. All right. So I'm going to put that in. I'll turn my lamp on just to be fun. Pretend I have a dehumidifier plugged into there or something instead of a lamp. Okay. So here in the simulator, there's the switch, which is my trusty lamp here. Then, which is actually dimmer. That's why it goes from on to turning on to turning off. So here, since I'm asking for humidity measurements, it prompts us, here, gives us a list of valid values. So let's say my base room is 10%, which we're not doing anything with. So then when this is 30, hopefully it'll just turn on. No, number format exception. Okay. I'm guessing because this is being parsed as a string. No. Or maybe these are strings. Is that right, Bob? And I think the event values always come in as a string, so that's why. So I'm going to say to
base value, is that's I don't know.
Let me see if this works. Someone else knows what I'm doing right off the top of my head. Feel free. So again, set the base to 10 and this to 30. Let's see what it says. No, it's 10. I have no logging in here, so let me fix that. Oops, wrong one. Oh, sorry, it's all quiet. My fingers are moving too slow. Let me see what. Oops. Input string. Oh, shoot. So the value is coming in. I know what the problem is. It's coming in like this.
Yeah, I think it's a problem in that virtual device type that it's sending the percent as part of the value.
Ah, okay.
So it's actually, we need to go back and change that virtual device because it's throwing internally. Yeah.
That's the humidity virtual device?
Yeah.
I've been having problems with that too. That's been one of the reasons why I haven't been able to like test these apps. Nuts.
Yeah, because I mean, it says right there the input string has got the percent sign in it. So it's,
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you won't trust.
So to answer an earlier question, the event.value is always the string. There are helper methods, like you can say event.integer value, which is essentially the same thing as event.value.toString, except that it will handle nulls and things like that. However, baseroom.latest value for humidity was trying to do the conversion internally. That's why before it was throwing the error on line 62. So we have to fix that device, I think. But what you're doing on 61 ought to work, I think.
For a big hack for right now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Like someone mentioned, if it 100% won't work with this, but for now, and then we'll just say, pretend the base room is always 10. So if I had I could probably use if I had some like AN multi-sensors, I think they do humidity. All right, so there we go. Lights on. So yeah, we'll fix up that humidity, that virtual humidity. If we had some actual humidity devices that I could test, that would work. But So basically, that's all we needed to do. So assuming these values we could get the right way, all we had to do was check to see if the difference between here is greater than the our allowed percentage, and if it is, then turn on the switch.
Cool.
All right, I think probably
Thanks, Matt.
Almost out of time. There's one quick last thing. This is all Groovy, but there are a few Groovy methods that we don't allow just for performance and security. For example, we don't let you kind of use some of the Groovy meta class stuff to change like how strings work or things that might affect other users. So just wanted to throw that out there. We also prevent apps from running that take too long, and I think that's 20 seconds. So if you're trying to do something very computationally intensive or that's going to take a really long time, you might run into that timeout limit. Yeah, so I think that's about all I have.
Cool. So it's been requested that you actually save that app and share it on the community site.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that.
So do that, and then it seems like most people's questions have been somewhat addressed. There's Patrick Stewart has got one. Hey, Patrick, you can talk. You don't have to type. He asked, do function names need to be unique across smart apps, and does this impact namespace?
No, they don't need to be. Yes and no. They don't need to be unique across your smart apps. You can have a bunch that, because every app has an initialize and an updated. You could have humidity handler in every one of your apps if you want.
Okay, so that was a setup for my next question.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Is there any way that we can actually get reusable functions as a user library? I can't tell you how many times I've had to rewrite the stupid hex to IP conversion and had to put it into every one of my IP-based apps that I'm writing.
I'll address that. We've done the same thing ourselves, and we feel your pain about that. And there's definitely a need for that. There's nothing I can announce date-wise now, but there's a dire need for that.
Yes.
Module apps that Matt was showing you before, we have cases where we have things copied many times, and we clearly need to provide something like that. So it will be coming. I just don't, it's not quite as close as the GitHub integration, which will be really close, but we're looking at that.
Okay. Yeah, it'd just be nice to have a SmartApp shared, function list. And then I can just do shared app dot function name and keep calling it every single time.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I think this has been very good. I thank Matt for your time both preparing and doing this, and I thank everyone else for coming to the event. We're going to be doing more virtual workshops like this. They might have focus areas. They might have, one might be a device type one. We might do more SmartApp ones. We might do even more basic ones or more advanced ones. I definitely thank you guys all for coming. We are going to do in-person SmartApp workshop. So next week, if you happen to be in the Bay Area, we are doing one on next Tuesday. But at least for the next couple of months, I think you can count on something being in Minneapolis and in DC as well. So if you happen to be anywhere near those areas, you can do that or tell your friends about them. All right. Well, thank you. That sounds great. And then any feedback you want to give about that, you can send that to build@smartthings.com. And or Matt@smartthings.com, since he offered up his email address.
Sure.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.